Welcome back to the Cheap Heat Productions podcast. Okay, welcome back to the show, and we have a returning guest.
Hello.
Kelli Berins Brink.
I love your intro music, by the way. It makes me dance. I love it.
Yeah. Big shout out to my good friend Kevin Mullally. I was just helping him earlier write his best man speech for our good friend Thomas's wedding this weekend. So he was asking me for some tips. There was a lot of things I said to him that he couldn't use, but I helped him nonetheless. And I think we have a good plan to scare Thomas at the speeches this weekend.
Uh-oh. Sounds like a good time.
Yeah, it's going to be a long day of drinking anyway, which we like here anyway, so it's going to be cool.
Isn't that all you guys do over there?
Pretty much, yeah.
I need to come.
The typical stereotype is true.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Like I said last time, I'm like 40% Irish, so.
Yeah, we're going to do that family tree thing, and we're going to get it sorted and let the viewers know what's going on. Okay, the last time you were on, we were talking about Chris Benoit and the murder case around that. So we decided that we're going to focus on your expertise and my expertise, which would be murder and wrestling, and we're going to merge them together for a couple of shows. And got a few things that we've got in the pipeline that I haven't even told you yet, but I just need to pick, because the world of wrestling, there's a lot of dark, murky stories that I kind of told you about, like.
Yeah, there's a lot of, conspiracy, murder, sex, drugs, all the stuff that's story worthy happens in the wrestling world. It's crazy.
It's like the kind of rock and roll lifestyle as well, the wrestling world.
It is, yes, yeah.
Well, today we're going to talk about Jimmy Superfly Snuka and the case of his partner that was found dead in a hotel room. And kind of circumstances behind that. Obviously, Jimmy Snuka was a very famous wrestler all around the world in the 80s. What do you know about him yourself, looking from the outside in?
So what do I know about him? Okay, so, I got to remind everyone, I'm not really big into wrestling. I'm getting more into it, and I love like UFC and MMA and stuff like that. But wrestling, all I remember is from like when I was a kid, WWF wrestling was big, and that's what he was a part of, right? WWF and then WWE, I think, right? So I just know, he was Jimmy Superfly Snuka, and he was pretty like he had a lot of like moves and stuff that he was really well known for, and he would jump off the ropes, and he was just like really like one of the first of his kind in pro wrestling. He was like, everyone like really seemed to look up to him and think he was pretty cool. Am I right?
You're right, but he was in wrestling around the time in the 80s, like rock stars, like people in Hollywood. There was drugs, there was drink, there was that life on the road, and these guys would be on the road for 300 days a year. Like, so all that kind of stuff catches up with you if you're living in the fast lane, really.
Yeah, and it sounded like he was living maybe a little in the fast lane.
The night we're going to focus on is May the 10th, 1983. A 999 call was made from Jimmy's hotel room, and the cops arrived and found his girlfriend, Nancy, was dead at the time. And the circumstances were suspicious around it. There was nobody else there except for him. And even to this day, like, it's still not really answered what happened.
Yes. He has a story, though, or he had a story as to what happened, an explanation. So, yeah. Do you want to go into that?
Yeah, well, when she was found, the coroner's report said that she had 24 cuts and bruises on her body and injuries to the brain.
Yes.
And after that, then it was obviously thought that there was violence involved in some part, but Jimmy pleaded his innocence from it. But when the deputy coroner looked at the case, he said that, I have the quote here, upon viewing the body, I would 100% suspect foul play. So that leaves him up in a really bad light. What did you hear about it? Do you remember hearing the story of the media?
Yeah, I don't remember hearing the story, but in the research that I've done and what I've read is that he and Nancy were kind of just messing around, having fun. You know, they were on a trip or wherever they were out of town near their hotel, and they were kind of wrestling and just playing around, and she fell, hit her head on the concrete, and that's how she got hurt. That's what he said. And then, yeah, when they found her in bed, but I don't think she was dead yet, is what I think I read, that she wasn't dead yet, but that she died shortly thereafter, and she had a brain bleed and lots of injuries that seemed different than what you would get just kind of wrestling around and playing around with your mate there. So yeah, it was very suspicious for sure. Yep.
Yeah. It seemed that she had like a bad blow to the head, which could have been caused by maybe them fooling around. But then
yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. People are just messing around, and someone will act like fall and unexpectedly and hit their head, and totally not malicious or intended at all, but they will, suffer a fatal injury just innocently. But yeah, she had other injuries though besides the really traumatic brain injury. So yes, cuts and scratches and all sorts of stuff. And but yeah, his story was that they were just kind of rolling around on the ground, messing around, and that they were just playing around and that she got hurt. But they had a really volatile relationship, and in the weeks before this happened, there were a lot of red flags in their relationship, and it just seems like, maybe there was a little more going on, and it definitely, a lot of people think, that it was foul play. So yeah.
I found it interesting that 2 years later, like, Jimmy was kind of pleading innocence from all this, but her family took him to court and won a lawsuit for $500,000.
Yeah. Do you guys have stuff like that happen there in Ireland? Because I know, like, here, someone could be found not guilty of murder, but because of the overwhelming evidence in a case, they can still sue the person in a civil suit and get money, like get a monetary compensation or something, just because there's like overwhelming evidence that seems like they did it. And then, they owe money to the family or whatever then. So yeah, that's what happened in this case. And I'm pretty sure that happened in the O.J. Simpson case as well. So yeah, that happens. So yeah, obviously the evidence and stuff looked like, like he did it. So yeah, but ironically, he was never arrested at the time because he was Jimmy Superfly Snuka and everyone, loved him. He was famous. So they didn't arrest him. They just kind of took his word for it that, that his story was correct and he wasn't lying. And yeah, they were just messing around and it was a total accident. So he wasn't arrested at that time, although a lot of people suspected that he did it.
So you reckon he kind of got away with that because he was famous, really?
I think so. Because, in their whole relationship was pretty volatile. And the week before she passed away, she had told her mother that, she was leaving him once and for all. He had, he had a history of like domestic abuse, violence, things like that. And she told her mom she was done with it and she was coming home and she was going to be done with Jimmy. Well, it was like a week later and she was found dead. So I don't know, that it could be a coincidence. You never know. I wasn't there, obviously, but yeah, it just kind of seems like a lot of the stories we've heard in the past, and especially with wrestling, there's just a lot of turmoil, it seems like, in the lives of some of these pro wrestlers. It's like a magnet for that kind of.
After that happened, then everything went quiet for a long time until 2015 when the case was reopened.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah. And at that time, it seems like, they had done a little more investigating. Time had passed. They had had a lot more time to research and look into the case. And they were going to pursue like an arrest. But at that time, he was like, I think he was like 73 years old or something like that. Yeah. And he was suffering from dementia. And they just weren't really able to move forward with that. And a lot of people would say that he was faking dementia. I don't know about that, but a lot of people thought he was kind of like playing up the whole dementia aspect just so that he wouldn't get charged with it. But regardless, he was not charged with that. And so no one was ever arrested for Nancy's murder, sadly. But a lot of people really do suspect that it was Jimmy who did it. So, and, one thing I really want to talk about here is, well, the dementia thing, the mental illness, the drug use, steroid use, head injuries. It's a constant theme in pro wrestling stories that are tragic like this. Lots of, like those head injuries really seem to manifest themselves like later in life or years later. And maybe, they might get a concussion and don't have a ton of effects from that, like right now, but like in 10 years, their life is really messed up and their brains are just not able to function at the level that they were before. And that's just, it's sad. It's a sad fact. It brings on a lot of trouble for them in their lives too. Yeah.
Yeah, because he pleaded not guilty throughout the whole case, even up until the 2015, 2016, and then he passed away in 2017. So it's kind of like a situation almost like the last time we talked about the Chris Benoit case. It's like nobody will even know what happened ever.
Yep, nobody will ever know. People suspect, and there's a lot of evidence that shows that that's what happened and that he did murder her. But there were only 2 people there who know for sure, and they're both gone now. So we're never going to hear the rest of the story. But I think, I don't know. I'm curious what like the wrestling fan community thinks. What was the overriding consensus there? What did people think? Did people think like that he did it? Do you think he did it? What do you think?
I think that it went quiet for an awful long time until the Dark Side of the Ring episode aired.
I listened to that on some podcast episodes too.
It's a great show over there, and they kind of look at pro wrestling from the objective that we're looking at now in terms of crime as well. So when they put their episode out, I think it was like pretty obvious that they thought he did it as well. But it's one of those things that we just won't know.
No, we're never going to know. And how do you get a severe brain injury, lots of scratches and cuts and other injuries and a brain bleed without something pretty significant happening? If they were just wrestling around, and that was his girlfriend, would he have been that hard on her, like to the point where, like, I don't think like if it was just all in good fun, he would have had it or done that to the point where she would have been fatally injured. I think it would have been more like gentle. And, I don't know. I think it's pretty obvious that that's what happened.
Like I think in closing, like would say like he most likely is responsible for it. Like, but it could have been an accident that went too far.
Totally. It could have been an accident, but I do think no matter what, intentional accident, whatever, she died at his hand. That's what I think. But there's a lot of stuff that plays into maybe why he had those issues with violence and anger management and stuff like that. And I definitely think it goes back to head injuries and drug use and stuff like that. I just don't think that he was functioning at full capacity. Maybe I don't think I think a lot of these wrestlers who have had, crazy stuff happen in their lives or erratic behavior or things like that, I think it all kind of goes back to numerous concussions, just head injury after head injury. And it really changes who they are as a person overall. It's just not an easy life. So, yeah.
Listen, it was great to catch up with you today, and we're going to dive into another wrestling myth the next time. I haven't quite figured out what it's going to be yet, but it's going to be something a little different. It won't be a murder.
Oh, okay.
It'll be something sinister from the wrestling world anyway.
I love dark and sinister. I'm there. I'm all for it.
Brilliant.